Now Mercedes-Benz do have their fair share of models out there. Take this car for example, this is the Mercedes-Benz GLE Coupé, and it basically has a slopier roofline at the back of the car. But would you compromise if you go for that? Do you compromise on boot space or rear headroom for example? Well, my name's Nick O'Leary guys, and welcome to another Mercedes-Benz review. Now the Mercedes-Benz GLE Coupé sits kind of right up there in the Mercedes-Benz range and is actually very, very similar to the GLE SUV that I reviewed very recently, not too far from here. But I kind of see the GLE Coupé as for people who kind of might have like maybe a CLA for example, so one with a kind of slopier roof, and then they kind of realise that they need a bit more space on the inside but dislike the kind of boxier SUV shape. And of course we'll take a look at the headroom and the boot size and what it's like to drive in a minute. Now the one I have here is a GLE Coupé Premium Plus. Of course, as always, specs will vary. I'll try not to go through exact specifications in this video just because it can change over time, but just keep an eye out because Mercedes have introduced something really unique on the GLE range since I filmed the GLE SUV as well. So they now have a thing called the Urban Edition. Now, rather interestingly, the GLE SUV now starts at a lower price than when I reviewed it previously, which is quite unheard of these days. A lot of things have risen in price, but yeah, there's actually a kind of entry-level model introduced into the GLE range now as well, and that is also applied to the GLE Coupé. So, price starts from £79,360, and now the SUV actually starts from £75,445, so just a few £1,000s more for the coupe-styled shape. Now when it comes to the design, Mercedes of course with a lot of models these days have integrated all these tiny Mercedes-Benz styles and then a big one in the middle. As I always say, just remind you what you're driving. But I really like it actually. It's certainly very modern and there's certainly lots of chrome elements all the way around, even along the bottom here as well. And Mercedes-Benz have also put some new lights on this model as well, just like the GLE SUV, kind of one big strip of light up here and some extra elements underneath. And this has multi-beam LED. So no, this isn't digital light. I would have loved to have seen that in a new model coming out, but there again, this is kind of like a facelift, so it's like a mid-cycle upgrade, if you will. So digital light or whatever Mercedes-Benz bring out in a few years' time, that new light tech will be in the next model, whatever it might be. Having said that though, I have reviewed multi-beam LED and it is very, very impressive. There's a separate video on that if you want to check that one out. Now, with the introduction of the Urban Edition, this is quite important, I think quite an important factor for a few people out there. The Urban Edition actually doesn't have running boards. So traditionally on a lot of Mercedes-Benz out there and over the years, they always have these running boards, which I personally quite like. I think they finish off a car's design quite nicely. I do appreciate that if you do a bit of off-roading or have been driving around in the winter, for example, you know what our roads are like in the UK, they can accumulate a bit of dirt. And you know what happens when you get out of the car? Those running boards do touch the back of your legs and then you leave kind of these muddy marks, which isn't great, especially if you're wearing a lighter bit of clothing or jeans or something. Now, just before we jump inside, the dimensions for the exterior. So length 4,941mm, width 2157, height 1716 to 1730. As this has air suspension, it can be adjusted. Now guys, if you're loving this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button just down below. I cover all sorts of things from Mercedes-Benz reviews to Volvo to Tesla and you name it. There's loads of car manufacturers I cover, but I also cover a load of Mercedes tutorials as well. So if you have any suggestions, let me know in the comment section down below and I might just consider your video. Right, on with the review. Now this is obviously quite interesting because on the boot of a GLE Coupé, despite the curviness, it's actually got quite a lot of space. So the boot capacity can range anything from 430 litres up to 690 litres. This is 690 as you see here. So yeah, even despite the kind of sloping roof at the back of the car, it's quite roomy. And if you fold the seats down, it'll go to over 2,000 litres. So yeah, I don't know how Mercedes have done that because that's quite good. There is also a bit of underfloor storage space as well, but I believe if you go for the plug-in hybrid, then of course you won't have that. It will just be the just this bit here. but obviously just something to factor in. But yes, one thing to note is you do have to manually fold down the second row. They're not done electrically like on the Mercedes-Benz GLS, which I reviewed very recently, whereas everything is electric in this car. There's just a bit of manual adjustment there, so there's no easy way to fold the seats down from the back. You certainly can't easily reach it anyway. It has to be done from the rear doors. Now again, this is surprising, you know, considering, of course, as I mentioned, the slopey roof, you would expect the boot to be small and the rear headroom to be, well, not as good. I'm sure it is slightly less, but what's quite interesting is this bit is actually quite high, but then it kind of rams off a lot more just here. So it's quite interesting how Mercedes-Benz have done that, because if that was the headroom there, my head would be touching. But no, I can literally get 4 fingers above my head. So weirdly, on a GLE Coupe, there's actually not that much difference in headroom. So again, I don't know how Mercedes-Benz have done that, but quite clever. Now for this interior colour though, this is not my preferred choice, having this kind of brown, almost like chocolate coloured interior, especially with black. Just not a huge fan of that. But there are different coloured interiors you can go for, and certainly I do appreciate different coloured interiors. The lighter one's quite nice, but personally, for practicality reasons, I would probably go black personally. But the design of everything in here is beautiful. I especially like the kind of wood effect, almost trims on here, surrounded by this speaker grille as well. This is the upgraded one. I think the standard ones are kind of like almost just like a black kind of colour. I forgot to add that that is my driving position as well, so that's how I've been driving for the past few days as well. I would say that the floor is slightly raised, ever so slightly compared to some other models, but there again, I do have naturally long legs, so there'll always be this kind of bit where it goes up and down like that anyway. Last couple of things, 2 USB-C ports down there and rear climate control in this particular car, and vents even on the B-pillars as well, so pretty fancy. And lastly, cup holders in there too. So yeah, brilliant. Right, let's have a look at the front. Now up front it is beautiful, and I will add on this particular car, because it has a few extra gadgets, soft closed doors. It's always a nice touch. I think they've been around on GLE Coupé for a little while, but yeah, so if you haven't just slammed doors. Now yes, as with a lot of Mercedes-Benz models, this design continues across their entire range, where you have these kind of awesome dual widescreen displays, and this has been around for quite a while now, and I honestly think Mercedes-Benz made such a good decision with doing this years ago, because it hasn't aged at all. It's so modern. Every time I see someone, you know, peer into these or something like that at like motor shows and that sort of thing, they just love the interior, and it's so good. They kind of were around on S-classes years and years ago, then the A-class in 2018, and even in GLEs today, they just look awesome. But more on the multimedia systems in a minute. We have all these buttons and things to go through, and design of climate control and that sort of thing. Now, as this is a dedicated SUV, of course, they do have these big grab handles here in case you're going to do any light off-roading or anything. Just for that added grip, you know, they're here, and it's actually surrounded by this ambient lighting, which is quite nice as well. Now, this car also does have a touchpad as well. So Mercedes-Benz actually removed the touchpad on a lot of models over the past few years, certainly on the new facelifts of things that have come out. But they have kept it in GLE SUV, GLE Coupe, this one, and GLS, and a couple of extras. And in case you're wondering, I did ask Mercedes this. It's due for ergonomic reasons. So naturally, I know first world problems. It just saves you having to lean forward to touch things on the screen. So I would have preferred the touchpad to remain in my own car, but it is here in the bigger cars like the GLE and GLS, I'd imagine, as Mercedes-Benz rightly said, for ergonomic reasons. But yes, so that means you can control the screen here, multimedia system, using the touchpad, touch screen, or you can do it on the steering wheel as well. So multiple different ways, and there is a voice assistant as well, which is actually surprisingly really, really good. It can do a multitude of different things. In fact, I do have a separate video on all the cool things it can do, so I'll link that up above, and there's also a link in the description down below on the top commands for the voice assistant. Hey Mercedes.
How can I help?
Can you tell me a joke?
Why don't oysters give to charity? Because they are shellfish.
Oh God, they're so cheesy. Moving on. In here we have 2 cup holders. Now in this particular car, there's heated and cooled cup holders in here as well. And I will admit those cup holders are massive. Everything about this car, you know, is a little bit bigger. Now I mentioned there were USB-C ports in the back, so there's another one here, and there's another 2 there, and a 12-volt socket, and wireless charging here as well. So yeah, loads of kind of power options there. Then we have climate control. So one amazing thing with this is that it is touch and buttons. So if I put this on, climate control, all these nice, very satisfying clicky buttons. But if you want to do it by touch, press menu and then you can do it all up on screen. So pretty cool, best of both worlds. Now moving over to the steering wheel, these are all touch buttons. So I just thought I'd mention this. I know some people aren't a huge fan of touch buttons. I do have a similar styled steering wheel with these kind of touch elements, and you basically just press in an area or swipe up and down and do various different things. And I do have a separate video on how you can customize and do all sorts of things with this instrument cluster, like putting the navigation up here and things like that. So it's pretty cool. It is touch, so I just thought I'd mention it. I know a lot of people aren't a huge fan of things like that, but you do get used to it over the course of a few days or so. Now this multimedia system is known as MBUX, so that stands for Mercedes-Benz User Experience, and is one of the best out there. Don't take my word for it, have a look at other reviews, and people do love this multimedia system just because it's so easy to use, very intuitive. You don't necessarily need to read the manual for it, just because everything you need is literally just a couple of touches away. Let me demonstrate. So if you go onto the sat-nav, for example, now to start, stop and mute the sat-nav, which is primarily the most important things you ever need to use on the sat-nav, are literally within centimetres of each other. So you just go, where to up here? Good morning, Nick, where do you want to go? Type in where you want to go, and once it's going, to mute and unmute is literally just there, and to finish is just above it on the little finish flag with the cross. That's it. Of course, this does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. If you prefer to connect your phone up that way, you can do it via the wire, or you can do it wireless on both. Just depends, of course, on your phone. Either way, it's a very, very easy to use sat-nav. And of course, if you just want to use the inbuilt multimedia system, it has Bluetooth capability and things like that as well. There's even some cool things on this multimedia system with some gadgets and things called dashcam. So if you make sure you opt for a thing called MBUX augmented reality, it's a very clever thing on the sat-nav that puts arrows on the screen on a live camera feed to kind of exactly show you where to go. Of course, that's not Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. You'd have to use the inbuilt multimedia system for that, but you can turn it into a dash cam, so then you don't need to kind of plug anything in or put any wires anywhere or anything. There's a dash cam built into this. Annoyingly, it is a manual start, and I've done a complete review of that, so I'll link that below and on the banner above as well. But also, if you want to check out some third-party dash cams, I've even reviewed those as well, so I've got you covered on all bases. But yes, back to the multimedia system, it's very, very easy. There's abundance of things on here you can do. You can even connect up Spotify and Apple Music, Amazon Music and Tidal to the multimedia system. There's a variety of different things in here in comfort as well, where you can, on some specifications, have a massage and things like that, like classic massage, wave massage. Not just one, there's a multitude of different ones you can choose. Now, one thing I will cover as well is the parking camera. So the parking camera on this is amazing. I'm just going to start the car up so we can get it on and bring up the camera. Now, I have the door open here at the moment, so that's why there's a bit of black over on the left-hand side. But it's so clever. Not only will it automatically put the camera view to where the sensors detect things, which is quite cool. So if you're, driving towards a post, it'll come up and show you that front just so you can kind of see it a bit clearer. But you can manually move this RAM like this and see all the way around the car. It's so clever. You can clearly see behind there's an object, and you can zoom in and out and see how straight I parked. Let's have a look. Good enough. So yes, it's very, very clever, and you can even go to the wheels, parking like on a curb or next to a curb. So it's very, very, very clever. Right, I think now is the time to take this out for a drive, and we'll talk about some of those engines just like usual, and we'll put this one through its paces because, well, the GLE Coupé, they don't really do small engines. They're all fairly big, and even with the plug-in hybrids as well, they are, well, very, very fast. And there's some AMG ones as well. Now, as I mentioned, guys, this is the GLE Coupé 450D. They don't do small engines in the GLE Coupé for sure, because it's very, very fast, very punchy. We'll be able to open it up in a minute when we're out on some faster roads, but in terms of the suspension wise and comfort when driving, it's very, very similar to the GLE SUV. In fact, if I was blindfolded and put in either one, I don't think I'd be able to tell the difference. And if it's me, the suspension on this could be slightly firmer, but I'm just trying to recall back to on the GLE SUV. It's not uncomfortable at all. It's very, very nice, and just kind of glides across the road. You just feel the bumps, the kind of perforations in the road just a little bit more, I think. But I'd have to literally drive them back to back to even notice. Power-wise though, I do love the 3-litre engines in the Mercedes-Benz range. They are beautiful. I know that I've spoken to Mercedes-Benz owners before. You know, I'm a member of a couple of forums online and that sort of thing. I've spoken to people at motor shows, and they absolutely love that 3-litre engine. It's so quiet, you can barely even hear it, but if you put your foot down, it will open up and give you a lot of torque. They're brilliant for towing. But yes, speaking of course of these engines, one thing that was quite interesting I would like to add is when I was doing my research and looking, obviously as I mentioned earlier on in the video, Mercedes-Benz had introduced this kind of urban edition, which they had done on another model somewhere before. It might have been the GLA or something like that years ago, which just kind of brought the entry-level price down a little bit, which is more than welcome. But what I found even more interesting is that the plug-in hybrid is about the same cost as just a normal engine, which is really, really cool, because usually when you think of plug-in hybrid or electric car or something, you usually think, oh, it's going to cost more. But no, this is about the same cost. That's quite good. That's worth its weight in gold to some people. The plug-in hybrid version of this goes up to about 60 miles, which is incredible. I do remember a day, as I've mentioned many times before on my channel, that plug-in hybrids, years and years ago, I remember when they did 7. And in the winter, it was more like 3. So I know obviously modern tech and larger batteries, and obviously this being a larger car, you can fit a larger lithium-ion battery in to power it, but that's quite cool. You can do a lot of your local driving on electric and just switch over to the engine when you want to go that little bit further. Obviously this one isn't the plug-in hybrid, but just thought I'd mention it because again that caught my eye. I was like, wow. Admittedly it's not one with all the gadgets and things like Premium Plus, but entry-level price, plug-in hybrids, pretty good. Now let's talk about those engines. So the one I'm driving right now is a GLE 450D. This is the 3-litre, 367 horsepower. Now the plug-in hybrid variants are almost identical. The only difference being is that one is a GLE 350DE and then the other one is a GLE 400E. They're both 2-litre, one's petrol, one's diesel. Both put out 252 horsepower, but they also have that electric motor, which can put out an additional 136 horsepower. But of course, there are Mercedes AMG versions as well. Now these are available in a GLE 53. This is also a 3-litre, but this is of course the Mercedes AMG high performance stuff. This is 435 horsepower, so just a little bit more. But then there's also the GLE 63S. So this is for those V8 lovers. This is a brutal 612 horsepower. Now I did also mention as well that this car has a built-in dash cam, so this is what this looks like. So as you're driving around you can see what that looks like compared to external third-party cameras. But as I said, it does require a manual start, so for me, I personally won't use that. I will use an actual dedicated dash cam, but I will add it's very, very good with it being all integrated in. You don't need to put in any wires or anything, so I do like that. Now the only thing I will say about this engine is that it doesn't encourage you to drive fast. So for example, we've got the faster road in just a second, but if you put your foot down, nothing will happen for a split second and then it'll go, right, let's go. But if you do put it in sport mode, it is a lot more lively. I guess that's just the way Mercedes-Benz have programmed their dynamic select, but put it in sport mode, it is a lot more lively. It's just it doesn't encourage fast driving. Not that you would want to drive fast in this. So I put my foot down there and then it goes. But then it really will go. So we're going to overtake this car here. And foot to the floor now. It's just a little bit of a delay, just while it changes down the gear and then goes. But if you put it in sport mode, it's very lively then. And even then in sport mode, the torque you have at this speed as well. Sometimes cars can be quite underpowered, but because of that 3-litre engine, it pulls. That's why a lot of owners who have had one always go back to it. This I don't memorise the engine numbers and that sort of thing, but this might be the same one that's in the S-Class. It sounds like it. I'm sure someone might be able to say, Nick, you should know that. It's this engine. But I'm sure it is that same engine as the S-Class, and it is a beautiful engine. But yes, the final thing I want to do, just like when I tested the Mercedes-Benz GLS, is its ease of use of parking, because it feels like a big car. Certainly just, you know, driving around in the town, you do feel it is a little bit wider. So I just want to see what that's like actually parking in a car park with the white lines, because, you know, you're going to use this as a daily car. How practical is it? So for this, I'm going to bring on the cameras and cheat. There we go. Park using the camera system. So this one's the one I want to look at here, because, oh yeah, look at that. Actually, there is a little bit more room than I initially thought. I don't think I'm actually dead straight in the lines, even with the camera. Oh well, let's have a look. Oh yeah, there we go. Perfect. Well, that is obviously pretty good. Self-closed doors. Nice. Well guys, I think we'll end it there. This is obviously an incredible car. I personally probably wouldn't opt for a car like this, just because I would need a bit more of a squared off back, maybe in the States or something, because we have a dog. Having said that, I do appreciate that obviously this has a very slopey roof and has just that added extra style for people who might not want the box jet SUVs. But guys, if you enjoyed this video, let me know down below in the comment section. Of course, like, subscribe, and of course, I will see you all next time. Thanks for watching. Take care.